A master called together a few young men of this generation and spoke to them, saying, I gave your great-grandfathers a time of despair and poverty and global war. They were strong and victorious and built an empire greater than any other. But they were terrible fathers and raised entitled sons and daughters of rot who inherited everything through no courage of their own. To those rotten sons, your own grandfathers, I gave abundance and wealth and stability. But they pissed it all away on debauchery and sexual revolution, establishing many idols and slaughtering tens of millions of children in sacrifice to their appetites. One generation fought against the perpetrators of a great Holocaust. The next dishonored that victory with an even greater Holocaust of their own children. The children who did survive, your fathers, carried on the sexual descent of their parents into new madness and new disease, piercing and inking their skin like death-worshipping pagans as they did, establishing special days of pride to celebrate the debauch, slaughtering more children and castrating and poisoning others, claiming to be creators when they were destroyers, mutilating the young and calling it acceptance. All these generations I have judged, and am judging. Their madness now is only a taste of my wrath. The young men were afraid and asked the master why he had called them and why he was telling them these things. Because it is now your turn. I am giving all of this chaos to you, he said. Your inheritance is a world of crumbling false gods crowded with blind and mad worshippers. I am entrusting you with a world of empires built on cracked and heaving foundations. The time of your inheritance is near. You have only a little while to prepare yourselves. Seize this moment of chaos and build me a world of sanity and righteousness. When I return, I will judge what you have built for me. With so much rubble to work with, I expect great things. The master turned to leave, but the young men begged him to wait. How can we do this, they asked. There are hundreds of millions of unbelievers in our nation alone and only a few of us. Their master answered, saying, I am not a hard master. You will have the truth and wisdom if you desire it. And you may each choose one woman to help you. That should be enough. Go now and build New St. Andrews College. Carpe Chaos.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. It's basketball season for me, so my voice just fluctuates every other show right now. We got a game tonight out in Troy. It's gonna be, I'm pretty excited about that game. We beat them by 2 the first time, so it's gonna be a tight game.
You're gonna win this time?
Well, we beat them by 2, but hopefully, yeah, we win this time also.
Again.
But we're at their house, so it's gonna be a challenge.
All right.
Thank you for joining us, Pastor Toby Chuck Knox. I'm the Water Boy, and Chuck Knox is on the road still. Hope to have him actually
join the club.
Yeah, join again.
Join the club.
Again. Join the club so Knox can be here. We're also we got a great show coming out tomorrow, actually Monday. We record on Fridays and release that show on Monday. It's gonna be a good interview. We got coming from the Rain Man. I'm just gonna leave it there. The Rain Man.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
While me and Toby are going to be at the.
Is that guy's name Dustin Hoffman?
Inauguration.
Dustin Hoffman's coming on the show. Oh my goodness.
That's
God,
hilarious.
You did it.
This guy's not autistic.
We'll see about that.
But me and Toby will be at the inauguration in DC just for 8 hours on the ground or something like that in DC. So we're excited to actually go to our first inauguration ever. Pretty historic event in our lifetime. So
yeah.
Let's get to the ads and let's get right into the show.
All right. First, I'm going to post. There we go.
You shared it.
Dominion Wealth Strategist. All right, guys, you listen to Cross Politics because you take the Dominion mandate seriously. Unsurprisingly, so does Dominion Wealth Strategist. They will help you build a multi-generational legacy with holistic financial strategies that include budgeting, insurance, debt management, retirement planning, estate planning, and more. Dominion Wealth leverages all corners of the financial services industry as independent brokerage agents, matching you with suitable products and services from dozens of top industry service providers. They educate, advise, and build plans to reduce your donation to Caesar and maximize your gift to God. No matter your tax bracket, they have solutions for every fiscal stage of life and for your kids. If you and your spouse want to take dominion over your finances, book a complimentary consultation at reformed.money today. That's reformed.money. From baptism to burial, Dominion has you covered. Once again, that's reform.money. Book a complimentary consultation today. We are really grateful to have with us today Mark Krikorian. He is a nationally recognized expert on immigration issues, has served as executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS, since 1995. He's testified before Congress and has published articles in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and has been on Cross Politic. Mark, thanks for joining us.
My list now from now on. Thank you.
That's right.
Glad to be here.
In.
Yeah, great to have you on. And we've been kicking around this H-1B discussion, and
because it really fired up in December with Musk and
it's been cooking.
Yeah.
And so
Vivek, that's right, Vivek.
We are grateful to have a specialist on the show to inform us on all things H-1B.
And I would love to actually just start with his CIS efforts. He's been with Center for Immigration Studies since 1995. What is that organization about? I mean, I never would have known of you if it wasn't for H-1B discussion going on.
Okay, well, so we got something out of it. So I'm glad Vivek and the rest of them launched that. We're a think tank in D.C. CIS.org is our URL. The reason it's such a short address is I got that address in 1995 by opening up the white pages and calling up Network Solutions in Northern Virginia and asking them if I could reserve it. And the funny story is the receptionist said, "Oh, the guy who does that's out at lunch now." And I said, "For the whole planet Earth, there's one person who does that?" And she said, "Well, he's got a part-time assistant." So that's how long ago this was. And so the center was actually founded in 1985 by a former retired Foreign Service officer. But it's grown since then. And we're basically the only think tank that's on the pro-enforcement, pro-borders side of the immigration issue. There's a lot of industry-supported and other supported think tanks on the anti-enforcement, anti-borders side. But we have our side. There's activist groups on the side of the issue we're on, but we're the only research organization.
So you guys are for legal immigration.
But we're for. Question is how much legal immigration? Yes, we are, but what does that mean for? Does that mean the million a year we take now? Does it mean half that? Does it mean double that? I mean, that's the question: is what does that mean? Because when they talk about illegal immigration, that's just about enforcing the rules. The question is, what are the rules?
Right. So start with just the H-1B thing. What is it for those of us, and explain it like we're in,
for us non-think tankers.
I understand.
What is it?
It's a supposedly temporary visa that is for basically for tech workers. I mean, it's for supposedly skilled workers. And tech companies are the main ones who use it. And they use it not because there's a handful of super geniuses that they want to bring in, but as a source of kind of large-scale, white-collar, cheaper labor. Not cheap. You're making more as an H-1B than you are, at Chipotle or something. But these are foreign workers, mostly from India, who were brought in to do kind of ordinary tech work, but cheaper than Americans.
And so presumably you've been following this skirmish. You have Elon out there saying, maybe we need to cut back a little bit. Vivek coming out saying, well, the reason we have this problem is because there's a lot of Americans that grew up watching Saved by the Bell. So what do you make of that big explosive skirmish?
Something like that was bound to happen because this broke out over Christmas week. But
that's right.
Weeks before that, one of the DC kind of insider publications called Politico did a story titled Stephen Miller versus Elon Musk, something like that. In other words, the coalition that President Trump put together, especially with the new tech bros in it, was inherently, there was some tension there because the president's base, his voters overwhelmingly want reductions in legal immigration, even not just illegal. That's been, there's been research on that. Whereas the tech bros talk about, big increases in immigration, that sort of thing. So it was going to happen one way or the other. It's just that the actual kind of the match that fell on the tinder was this particular H-1B issue at that, on Christmas week.
Right.
So before we move forward on that side of things, I was actually on your Twitter account today, kind of snooping around, and
Gabe, please, it's X.
X.
Yeah, no, it's Twitter. It's spelled X, but it's pronounced Twitter.
It's pronounced Twitter.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And just I want to get my plug in. It's Mark S as in Stephen Krikorian. If you have a taste for snark and sarcasm.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, Mark S Krikorian, K-R-I-K.
Yeah,
that's a K-R-I-K. So you retweeted this article from Tech Workers. It came from actually Luke Rosiak, Daily Wire, and he apparently discovered that H-1B jobs, that there's some of the jobs are going to interior designers, hotel clerks, assistant professors, and stuff like that. So it's broader than that.
Yes, it is. I mean, elementary school teachers in some places, they're bringing in foreign workers to teach elementary school. So yes, it's it's not just tech, but most of them are working in tech, and that's kind of the political engine that keeps it going. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So it sounds like there's maybe some level of that you're for H-1B, and then some instance, or maybe some part of this you're against it. Maybe you're actually kind of like me or something. What?
Yeah.
Give me both those sides of it.
Sure. I mean, I'm for genuine, like, best and brightest Einsteins being allowed to come here. Obviously, I'm not even sure anybody's against that. The question is, humanity doesn't produce that many Einsteins. You know, I mean, in other words, how high do you set the bar? Now, H-1B, though, there's a lot of lobbyist money behind it. It's not going away. So the question is, how can you reform it to make it less of a cheap labor program that harms Americans? Because it's often used to replace American workers, literally.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing I'd written a piece in the middle of that Christmas kerfuffle with Elon and the rest of them, making the argument that the way we give the visas out, there's 85,000 visas under the cap.
Okay.
The way we do it is we give it out by lottery. In other words, of all the companies that submit applications, we literally pick them at random.
It's not meritocracy.
It's insane because most of the people are kind of middling at best. You want best and brightest? Distribute them based on the highest salary offered. Because if a company is willing to pay somebody $250,000, that person's obviously a lot more valuable to them than someone they're going to pay $70,000 to, you know?
Yeah.
So, Mark, help me think, earlier even when Gabe asked the question about legal immigration, you said, we have to figure out what the rules ought to be.
Right.
How do you think about the rules? I mean, what are some principles that guide your think tank on what legal immigration ought to even be?
I have a whole 20-minute presentation on that, but I'll give you the short version of it, which is
2 minutes or less.
Yeah, I understand. Which is that a continental nation with 1/3 billion people doesn't actually need any immigration. So but that doesn't mean zero. It means you start at zero, like zero-based budgeting. Okay. And then what categories of people have such a strong case to be let in that we let them in, even though in modern conditions, with a welfare state, mass communications, all of that stuff, immigration's actually harder to handle than it was 100 or 200 years ago. And so building up from zero, the first group would be husbands, wives, and little kids of American citizens. Nobody really argues about that, but that's 350,000, 400,000 people a year out of the million that we take. So husbands, wives, and little kids, and then a handful of real Einsteins. And, among these H-1B people, if 2% of them are Einsteins, that would be a lot. There's other categories too, but so a handful of Einsteins, and then lastly, I would say a small number of genuinely humanitarian refugees who have no other option and can't go anywhere else. And most of the people we take as refugees don't fit that description, honestly.
So, Mark, you just made me think of a couple things. You referenced this. You didn't really thumbs up or thumbs down it, but it's like in a lot of ways, our federal government has created this work labor force problem, and I'm thinking of the social net
welfare.
The welfare stuff.
Right.
That to me should just be gone. The church should take care of that. That's not a government issue. But that's caused some problems because poor illegals come here and are incentivized to come here. The second issue is we've killed 60 million babies since 1973. Well, that's a lot of workforce. Those are a lot of jobs.
Right.
And then and this is kind of either related to sin in our nation or back to the social net thing, is we have a lot of lazy people in our country that should be working. And instead they get money from the government. They need to go to work. So those are three things just off the top of my head, thinking like, we don't really have you're right in one sense that we don't really need immigrants to come in and work. We have our own workforce to do that. But here's me. All right, here's my other side of this argument. A private business should be able to hire whoever he wants. Now that doesn't mean, the guy from Czech Republic, or the guy from India can be a U.S. citizen, but they can hire, I think, whoever they want as a private citizen, private company.
Yeah, but that means that every American is then competing with every foreigner for a job. In other words, everybody everywhere. And, the fact is that I don't think a lot of Americans get how lucky we are. I lived in the former Soviet Union for a couple of years as a student. Yeah. And I've traveled some in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And the fact is, and some in Latin America, if you're in Haiti, for instance, you're better off living on the street in the United States than you are in Haiti. Yeah. So part of your pay is just not being in Haiti anymore and being in the United States. So, there are, I guarantee you, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people who would happily work for room and board and no pay at all, just to be able to get into the United States. I'm not interested in subjecting my fellow citizens to that. And so there have to be limits to how many people we let in.
Yeah, I have no problem with limits. And so that's why I made a distinction between, as a private company, I should be able to hire whoever I want. I've hired India developers, but it's not a competitive hiring to one of my U.S. developers because I hired them for different reasons. So I have both. Actually, I literally have both even now. But there's been very different reasons why I hire an India developer between, my friend or one of my colleagues that's on my tech team.
But I mean, they're not as different as you would think. And the companies that use H-1Bs, by their actions, show that they're not that different. It was 10 years ago this month that Disney laid off its entire IT staff, American IT staff in Orlando, and replaced them with H-1Bs. And they were so highly skilled, supposedly, I put air quotes around highly skilled, that the Americans had to train them how to do their jobs as a condition of getting severance before they were fired.
Oh my goodness.
So this isn't Einstein moving to to Princeton University. This is large scale.
Yep. We lost your audio there for a second. Mark, is your audio back?
Ooh, just kind of blipped out.
Okay, now here we go. I don't know what happened.
Oh,
you're back. Okay, so you ended at large scale. This is large scale.
Large scale replacement of American workers is what it is. I mean, it's just, now there are other categories. Well, for instance, let me even just give you an example from history. After World War II, we brought German rocket scientists and other scientists to the United States. Top talent these people were. Mm-hmm. The tech people today compare H-1B and other programs to that, except that in 15 years, we only brought over 1,600 German rocket scientists. So 100 a year, basically, a little more than that. Mm-hmm. Nobody could argue with that. Nobody would argue with that. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of kind of, mid-level, middling at best, ordinary workers. There's I just don't see any excuse for that.
What do you make of some of Gabe touched on this, Vivek's comments. Are we? I think even some of what Elon has intimated is that if we were to at least crank this faucet way down and we don't have this influx of workers, are American tech companies going to suffer enormously because of the lack of skilled, whatever that level of skill is? But that those workers, are we missing that many workers that it would tank the tech companies?
No, not at all. Like I said, we have 1/3 of a billion people here. We have the majority of Americans who've majored in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. The majority of them don't work in STEM jobs. They've gone into other fields because in a lot of cases, it's not worth it. They're competing against people who are willing to work cheaper. So and just more broadly in the economy, not even the tech part of it, we have the lowest share of working age men who are working ever recorded in our country. The share of men, of working age men working, this isn't about old people or anything. This is 25 to 55. So they call it prime age. When, when I was a kid, that was like 97, 98% of men in that category were working. And the rest of them were, in jail or handicapped or something,
Right.
Now it's down to, I forget what the percentage is, not in front of me, but it's the lowest it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
If we just went back to what they call the labor force participation rate, the share of people either working or actively looking for work, that we had back in the year 2000, which wasn't that long ago. Maybe I'm old and that's giving my age away, but it wasn't that long ago. We'd have literally millions of extra people in the labor market. So, and the additional wrinkle to that is that when you have this flow of people constantly coming in, the incentive for businesses, for government, for churches, for anybody to address the reasons people are just playing video games and smoking weed and living in their mother's basement, addressing those social problems, which are real problems. I mean, Vivek wasn't making that stuff up. Now, I've never even watched Saved by the Bell, but the point is, the kind of things he was talking about weren't meaningless.
Right.
We're not going to bother addressing those. What incentive is there if there's always somebody else coming in to do the work? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. So we have to. I mean, we have some perverse incentives on one side, allowing kids to grow up without a work ethic, allowing kids to grow up glued to video screens, whatever.
Yeah.
That's one side of it. But you're saying at the same time, we need to have we can have other perverse incentives on the other side where there's no work for them, or at least it's very, very difficult to get work. Add on to that, maybe all the DEI stuff where it's like, if you're a white male, you're at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah.
Then that makes absolute sense.
So what do you hope to accomplish in this, this immigration problem, honestly, really, I think came to the public square with Trump's first election and his campaign there.
Build the wall.
Build the wall stuff. I mean, I never really thought about U.S. having an immigration problem.
It was like Ann Coulter was like, there's one other voice out there, but
and so now, of course, you see a lot of problems under the Biden administration, and here's what I'll get to the question here, but it seems to me the Biden administration has choked legal immigration and incentivized illegal immigration. And maybe you can correct me here, but my brother-in-law and my sister married a religious refugee Nicaraguan in Mexico. Good brother in the Lord. They had to get married in Mexico because he, being a religious refugee was harder to get a visa to come in the States and even get married. So they got married down in Mexico. They're living there. He's in ministry down there right now. They had a baby, and they've been filling out paperwork and going through the process for now 2.5 years.
Yep.
2.5 years. He could have come across the border illegally, probably got $450,000 or whatever. And he's been doing this for 2.5 years, paying lawyers to do it and all that stuff. And he's not going to get that accomplished under the Biden administration. My sister-in-law is a U.S. citizen, and they couldn't get it done in 2.5 years. So, but all this legal stuff. So that's kind of like a little anecdotal take on why I think Biden wants the illegal immigration thing. I think it's pretty clear he does. He wants to disrupt our democracy, at the same time choking the legal way of doing it. So what do you think? What do you want to accomplish over these next years regarding this immigration, especially with Trump in office?
one of the reasons that, for instance, like you said, spouses of American citizens, and I've talked to other people like this who've had problems, is that the DHS and the bureaus within it that deal with this stuff only have so much bandwidth. And so Biden has let in so many illegal immigrants and created all of these kind of semi-legal statuses that have to be processed, that the people who get pushed to the end of the line are those trying to enter legally. Sam Francis years ago, the late Sam Francis, called it anarcho-tyranny, where people who obey the laws are, aren't able to navigate the system, whereas those who just ignore the laws, that's the anarcho part of it, get away with it. And that's so what we need is restore order. Almost even before we have a debate about what legal rules should be, we need to start enforcing the rules.
Yeah.
And then we can have the ability to actually decide who we should let in and how we should let them in.
When illegal immigration was being a real problem in Texas and the border, Florida, the governor started shipping illegals into Chicago and New York and Martha's Vineyard and all that stuff.
Yep.
One of our ideas, this wasn't, I don't think, well thought out, but I like the idea still, was we thought Governor Abbott, because you also have a real problem of these illegals coming in, and they shouldn't be coming in, but they come in because they want a better life. There are some of those. And there's the real bad illegals who have criminal records, they're bad guys, all that stuff. But there's some of that population is just, honestly, I want a better life in America. And so one of the things that we kind of hypothesized was, maybe Governor Abbott should declare a emergency, a health emergency in Texas, delete the payroll taxes, so good businesses could adopt and help and train and bring in good immigrants who actually could help with the jobs that need to be filled, and pull a Fauci and just say this is a health crisis and we need to get rid of payroll taxes to be able to take on and integrate illegals into a good situation where they actually become maybe good citizens over time. That's just, we didn't think through it very much, but we popped off on it.
I get that. Yeah. So, but the fact is that most illegal immigrants are just regular people. They're not saints. They're not, gangbangers. They're just ordinary sinners like everybody else, a little bit of good, little bit of bad. And that's frankly describes most of humanity. This, and we are just not going to be taking all of the, or be open to all of the non-criminal people in the world. I mean, Vivek says, we want, or even Musk said this, we want to take anybody who's hardworking and willing to contribute, this kind of thing. Well, how many? 500 million, 700 million? I mean, the world is a big place, and much of it is a broken and sad, in a broken and sad situation. And we can't fix that by letting people just all come here. In fact, if anything, it makes it worse. It makes it worse for our own citizens, and we have a responsibility to our own people. I mean, one of the epistles says, a man who doesn't take care of his own family is worse than an unbeliever.
1 Timothy 5. That's right.
Our people, our people are our family in a sense. I mean, we take care of our own actual family, but then the next circle out is our community and then our country. We have a responsibility to our fellow Americans.
Two follow-up questions. One is the tech bros have also been saying, if we don't keep H-1Bs going, we're going to fall behind China. We're going to, the sort of international competition. I'm hearing you say, like, no, we're going to be fine. We'd be fine. We don't need this. And I assume that would include with regard to China and some international competition.
Absolutely. Like I said, I keep going back to the fact that we've got almost at this point 350 million people. We invented the modern world. Hewlett and Packard were not immigrants. Bill Gates, for whatever, I mean, okay, Windows is terrible, but Bill Gates is not an immigrant. And so the point here is not that immigrants are bad. They're regular people like everybody else, but we have not just a stock of brain power, not just the educational institutions that are some of the top in the world. That's why foreign students come here. we also have a culture of questioning and disruption and innovation that isn't replicated, for instance, in China. I mean, the stereotypes about rote learning and all of that stuff, there's stereotypes, but like many stereotypes, there's actually something to them. So that if anything, being dependent on a constant flow of people from abroad for our vital national industries, defense industries and what have you, is no better than being dependent on, Saudi Arabia for oil or anything else like that. It's not, it's imprudent, and we need to dial it back.
One of my friends told me a story about one time he was in our friend is he's started a Christian school here in this town, and then started other Christian schools, and then was in England one time talking to a British friend, and they were talking about moaning the state of education in England, and our friend said, "Why don't you start a school?" And his friend looked at him and said, "That's such an American thing to say."
And that was England. That wasn't China. Nobody's starting schools in China. I'm telling you that. So
we actually had friends do that and got arrested. But
yes. Right. Yeah. So then, I mean, the other thing was I wanted to ask you about was I've seen reports too of H-1Bs kind of being used, sort of abused, even not just in terms of displacing jobs, sort of with a legal loophole, but bringing people here and sort of creating almost like an indentured servitude sort of situation where, there's like, you're going to get paid this much. And if you don't, do everything, dot all the I's and cross all the T's, you can be deported. And so there's sort of this gun held at them to a certain extent where they're trapped because they feel like, I don't want to leave America. This is the only job I've got, or this is, and creating
what's the problem?
I'm going to let Mark explain to you the problem.
Okay, great.
No, absolutely. I mean, it is a form of indentured servitude. There's no way around that. And the worst offenders are what they call body shops, which are like rent-a-programmer staffing companies that apply for a whole bunch of these kind of middling programmers and then rent them out to tech companies. And there's real abuses there. There's no question. Yeah. Although the indentured part does even apply in better companies. Like if you're working for Google or something, it's not the same thing, but you can't be promoted because if you take a promotion, that's a different job. You need a visa for that. So this is definitely, if you have a green card, which means you're a regular legal immigrant, you're just not a citizen yet, you can work anywhere you want. You can't go on jury duty and you can't work for the post office. But other than that, you can do what you want in the labor market. Yeah. All of these guest worker type programs, H-1B, and there's a lot of other ones, involve an element of control over the person, which I think is morally suspect, in addition to just not being good policy.
Yeah. Is there another visa that is, someone told me recently that there's another visa that actually is for the Einsteins.
Yeah, like the O visa. Okay. O as in Omicron or whatever. Yeah, it's
or Einstein. O as in Einstein.
Yeah. They call it the Einstein visa sometimes. And that's a temporary visa, but could turn into a permanent, if you applied for a green card. And so the companies that actually have a genius person from Finland or Zimbabwe or whatever they want to bring, this is what they would use. You wouldn't use the H-1B visa.
So again, why if that's really the Einstein one, the high skilled, this is 1 in a million, whatever. Why do we still need the H-1B visa?
We don't. I mean, it's a creation of the tech industry lobbyists in Washington. And now it's become a sacrosanct thing that we can't get rid of.
Right. Okay.
I want to challenge, and I don't necessarily, and this needs to be defined. So I don't have a problem. I agree with you. Any program we have, we need to have a cap on it. How many immigrants should we allow a year, or how many immigrants should we allow in this program, whatever. So
standards.
I agree with you. Everything needs to be defined on that side of things. But I also am having a problem with some of the ways we're defining things on the other side of this, where I don't necessarily have a problem with maybe I'm thinking more of like an apprentice or an intern when you say indentured servant kind of thing. Where I think one of the ways to do healthy immigration, because I want any immigrant to come into this country, I want them to become an American.
Mm-hmm.
We're America. We're Americans. You're coming. And I want to, I like the idea of having a process where they have to prove themselves. And then, of course, go through the test and memorize our nation's history, all that stuff. I think it's great. So one of the ways to do this is have a family be connected to this sponsored immigrant and maybe his family or just this individual, or have a business connected to this immigrant. So they're part of like the bringing into America process.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't get paid as well. Or yeah, you maybe you work on my farm for 2 years as part of this agreement. I'll pay you, $20 an hour. You'll get room and board on my farm and we'll pay for that. And you won't get paid as well as the others, or $15 an hour, or whatever. But you're also kind of part of my family and part of my company, to where I'm taking you to church, or I'm talking about our history of America. So I'm part of bringing them into our culture over time. To me, that seems like a very healthy process, as opposed to it just being like this government program and they decide. And then there's this very disconnected relationship between the business and the employee. So I like that. You call it indentured, whatever. I like the closeness of that process. That's what I want. And whether you call it internship or apprentice, I don't want to call it a full-time job or a real job, in the sense that no, you gotta prove yourself and you got to want to become an American.
We actually kind of had something like that, and still nominally do, in sponsorship of immigrants. In other words, these are either refugees, there's certain categories of immigrants. Yeah. And so the way it used to work is, for instance, after World War II, there would be a church in Iowa, and they would sponsor a family, a guy and his wife and their 2 kids who fled Poland or something. And they would come over, the church would put them up. He'd work as a janitor. The ladies guild would help the wife with things. What we have now is sponsorship on paper. You sign a piece of paper, but unfortunately, the main responsibility of sponsors now, after 3 months, is just to sign people up for welfare. So it's not sort of sacrificial charity anymore. It's just it's kind of virtue signaling. And even worse than that, in the refugee business, it's a business because there are these groups that resettle refugees. They get paid by the State Department by the head. And government, so this is not what people think of as sponsorship. Yeah. And even worse, when Bloomberg was mayor, Michael Bloomberg was mayor of New York, toward the end of his term, and I'm not a big fan of Michael Bloomberg, but this was good. They looked up immigrants who were on welfare, and then tracked down their sponsors who had signed sponsorship agreements and said, hey, you owe the city of New York this much money because you pledged to support this person. Yeah. They collected some money.
Wow.
But it was toward the end of his administration. And then Bill de Blasio, who was, honestly, was a Marxist, basically.
We call him Hot Dog de Blasio.
He sent the money back. So, in other words, back to the people who had actually fulfilled their responsibilities, however unwillingly. So until you bar people from using welfare and make genuine sponsorship a real thing that you are personally responsible for, it's just not going to work, honestly.
Okay, last question here, and then I gotta go coach basketball. You also retweeted this, Elon talking about this. The House, was it today or yesterday? It looks like yesterday or this morning. The House just passed a bill to declare that illegal aliens who commit sex crimes or domestic violence are inadmissible and absolutely deportable. So they can't even try to come in if they've done that. And 145 Democrats in the House voted against that.
Yep.
We're in a whole new world. I used to think in the 80s and 90s that, the Republicans and Democrats were just kind of fighting over some small things, and the disagreements were few and far between on the big principles or whatever. I cannot. I don't even think I could intelligently have a reasonable conversation with a Democrat congressman or senator anymore. I don't. I mean, when they're doing stuff like that,
right.
where, you know, in abortion too, it's like they believe you can murder babies. Like, how do I talk to you? Like, what's going on here?
I mean, as far as the immigration part goes, there's two things there. The big picture thing is that the left today, unlike in the 80s and 90s, literally does not believe that the American people have the right to keep anybody out. They think that immigration control of any kind is racist and illegitimate, and America deserves whatever it gets anyway, because they don't even like America very much. But that's kind of the big picture. They believe in unlimited immigration with the same intensity as they believe in abortion. It's a litmus test issue for them. The smaller issue is that what you described would make people inadmissible. In other words, they wouldn't be allowed in, but if they were here, they'd be deportable too. And what they would never really say it this way, but what they really mean is, well, these immigrant cultures are different and they beat up, you know, they'll smack their wives around and we can't impose our expectations on another culture. It's the kind of smaller, less evil version of that rape gang stuff in England, where it's like, well, that's their culture. You know, it's that sort of thing. So, I mean, there's real on immigration. The left has just totally checked out. They're no longer an economic left. They're now a cultural left, which means they're fundamentally anti-American.
Mark, before we go, if people want to just normal people want to learn more about immigration, do you have resources or is there a book or a pamphlet or a website where you say, this is a really helpful website to learn about how this works?
Wow, the most helpful website is cis.org, which is our website, and we have new blog posts every day. But for one simple thing to read, I would recommend, and it's a little booklet to order. And it's something that I wrote one half of, and Alex Narasta from the Cato Institute, who believes in unlimited immigration and no borders, he wrote the other half. So it was called Open Borders, Yay or Nay. And it's sort of, you flip it around, and it's like a mini book. It's not a long thing. So that's, I think, a useful thing for people to read, to kind of for them to think it through and see what they actually think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mark. Really appreciate that. Thanks for coming on the show, and everybody go follow him on X, pronounced Twitter.
Mark S.
Krikorian.
Krikorian.
Like a Gregorian chant kind of book. It means the same thing, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Most real estate transactions happen at pivotal moments in life, both happy and sad, like a growing family or the loss of a loved one. At Story Real Estate, buying and selling homes isn't just closing deals. The folks over there know that it's a big life moment. Now, if you love serving people through these types of moments, Story Real Estate is looking for great people to join their team. So go to storyrealestate.com, click menu, and then join our team to apply today.
There you go. One of our listeners told us to go find Mark and interview him about H-1B. There you go.
Thanks, listener.
Hey, y'all, if you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. You have kids, go baptize them. Till next week, love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbors yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. We'll see you Monday.
Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitods, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability. Willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. Long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrews College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.
You sit in church week after week, embracing the truth of God's Word. You believe the gospel and claim Jesus Christ as your Lord. Yet you continue to struggle with pornography. You feel like a hypocrite, returning to the sin you hate that mocks the God you love. You desperately wonder, is lasting freedom even possible? Yes, you can overcome pornography, but not alone. 2 Timothy 2:22 says, "Now flee from youthful lusts, and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart." Only by repeatedly running from sin to Christ with other believers can you hope to enjoy lasting freedom. You can live with purity and integrity. Take courage, seek accountability, and do whatever is necessary. Get equipped at accountable2you.com.